Okay, we are back on the record at 3:10 p.m. This marks the beginning of media number 3.
Mr. Schreurs, that during or in some of these declarations that I've seen, you state that Patrick was taking your picture.
Yes.
And was that with a camera or with that iPhone thing that you described, iPod?
Yeah, I've seen him take it with a camera that he carried around him, and then I've seen him take it with an iPod. I remember him taking a picture of my wife and I when we were walking down Bayswater. I remember him taking a picture of me as I'm coming out of the garage and I had to stop by the garbage guys. I saw him across the street at the apartment building directly across the street from us, inside the garage, holding a camera and taking video as I was driving out, and then stepping forward and then following. I've seen him take a picture of me while he's skateboarding and holds the camera up with one hand, and he's taking a picture of me. Several pictures of me. I would say an average between 15 and 30 pictures.
From what period to what period?
From 2007 to 2012.
That suggests there was at least a change with regard to photography in 2012, right?
A change of
In
photography.
other words, he stopped. Sorry, I had talked over you.
Yeah.
He was taking pictures, and then at some point, approximately 2 years ago, he stopped taking pictures of you.
Right.
Did he ever say to you that he was getting evidence against you?
Nope.
Did he ever tell you or suggest to you that he thought he was unfairly terminated?
Nope.
So it's all just fuck you and I'm going to get you, that's it?
That's it.
There's nothing,
In fact, he said it in front of his mother, so that didn't bother
yeah.
him either, saying it.
Well, you know, I have to confess to you, I've heard it a lot myself, but it doesn't bother me either, but I understand it bothers you. So, but as far as conversation, grammatical sentences, there's been nothing. Is that right?
Nothing.
And do I have it right that you think the behavior is in response to drug abuse? Is that what you think?
Mm-hmm.
You have to answer.
Yes.
And would you just set forth for us what evidence you have of drug abuse?
Again, back in the service, we get guys that would wind up going into town. They would wind up smoking some marijuana, which is readily available. They would come back, their eyes would be glassy-eyed, and they would be drinking, and they were mean. I guess the two don't work together that well.
Let me interrupt you. The two what?
The alcohol and marijuana.
Okay.
And so those things just counteracted each other. I've seen other guys just on marijuana, and they were just mellow as pie, and they would just go in their bunk and go to sleep. And others would wind up just being very aggressive. I have one of my clients who deals in addiction medicine, and his name is Cecil Bradley, and works out of Good Samaritan Hospital. And he has only addiction medicine patients. And I've seen some of them while I go in his office to help him with his books and stuff, and they are the same anger that they get because he's not giving them anything, and he's not providing them with drugs. He'll get them into a rehab or detox, but I'm not going to go ahead and help along by giving you a substitute that you can take and feel good about. So, he does therapy and then he does this, but he was telling me, he says, You got to watch out for some of these, because if they don't get it, they lose it and they get mad. But the minute they wind up getting a little money in, they're happy again, because now they've got their stash, and now they can spread it out over time, and then they'll start abusing it, and then they get mad again.
Okay. I think I have it, but can you explain to me how this relates to Patrick?
I think he winds up getting a hold of drugs. I know he smokes marijuana because we smell it, and I've seen him smoke it. Now he says that he does not drink alcohol, and told me that, when I offered him a beer, come in and have a beer after a hard day's work downstairs, I said, hey, come on up, have a beer. He says, you don't want to see me drunk. So I figured, okay, so the alcohol's out, here's a Coke. But, a lot of times I would walk in and his eyes would just be red bloodshot.
Walk in where?
Walk in to, from the garage. I'd walk over the garage. He would confront me in the garage, and his eyes would just be bloodshot. And he says, I'm talking to you. You stay right here. And I just start walking away towards my car, and then he stops. But just before then, you could see his eyes are bloodshot.
And in your opinion, that was due to what?
Either some kind of a drug, or he was on some influence. And it wasn't marijuana, because marijuana doesn't do that effect.
And when was the last time you saw that symptom?
The last time I saw that, it was about 2 weeks after we got our restraining order.
There were 2 restraining orders,
The one in
right?
2012.
Was that an incident that you didn't ascribe to being a confrontational one, or is that something you described to me earlier?
That's what I described to you earlier.
Okay. Which one?
The one where he was in the garage, and he was photographing.
Approximately when?
That was, gosh, it was right after we filed our restraining order. And so, because I remember him running out of the garage to try to beat me on top of the parapet as I was driving up, and then he had the camera. And this is where he was probably 10 feet from my car, and you can see that he just had this red glaze on his eyes.
Well, you're aware that there's a rule at the condo about driving your car in the garage with the lights on?
Mm-hmm. It's a house rule.
Right. Have you ever violated that rule?
Yes.
Has anyone ever spoke to you about it?
No.
Has Patrick ever spoke to you about it?
Absolutely.
So someone has.
Loud
It's just
and clear.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, it's consistent that he was photographing that behavior in violation of the regs of the Common Interest Development.
Calls for speculation.
Correct? It's consistent, is it?
That's according to you. Is
No,
that
no, it's
according to you,
consistent
Jim?
with the facts, right?
There's I would say there's probably 60% of the people that don't turn on their lights.
Right, but I'm
Now,
saying, no,
you
that's
can-
not the question. The question is, could he be taking a picture to record the fact that you're violating the rule?
Yes.
Okay. But he's never said anything to you about using his camera to document his treatment at the Park Plaza Towers. That's my understanding from your testimony. He's never said that to you, that that's
Not
why
to me.
that's why he takes pictures.
No.
Have you ever seen the famous picture of Sherry Berenstein?
Yes.
Where'd you see that?
Hanging in front of his door in the hall.
Have you ever accused Patrick of interfering with the Postal Service?
No. The Postal Service accused him.
No, I know. I
I
shouldn't
just
say
happen-
no, I know,
I
because I
just-
don't know anything. But
I just happened to be there.
Did you go to a board meeting and make a statement that Patrick's activities may interfere with the delivery of mail at Park Plaza Towers?
Yes,
Was that at a board meeting?
that was at a board meeting.
Okay. Earlier today, you indicated, I think, that you hadn't attended any board meetings since you retired.
That was prior to me getting off the board. I haven't attended any board meetings after I resigned from the board. My term was up in February. I resigned in January of 2007.
Right.
So an extra month, I just got off.
When was the report of interference with the mail?
That was like in 2006.
Prior to Patrick going to work for you?
No. This was in 2007. Yeah, no, this, I'm sorry, I'm missing the dates here. This was after I had gotten off the board. It happened. When I went downstairs, I was getting the mail. There was the mail person there, and another supervisor was there. And so she was told that they were to have a supervisor delivering the mail. And I forget her name, but the post office said to me, you know, if this keeps up with this person taking pictures and all this other stuff, we are going to go ahead and make Park Plaza Towers go down to the post office and start picking up their mail.
Who said that to you?
The postmaster. It was
Mail?
a heavy-set woman,
Okay. Maldonado, maybe?
maybe.
You don't know that?
I don't know the name.
That-
She wrote a letter to the board regarding that, which was posted.
And did you go to the board with that information?
Yes.
So you did attend a board meeting after Patrick's separation,
No, I told that to the board. I told it to the president of the board.
not at a
And
meeting?
not in the meeting. They brought it up in the meeting.
Do you remember that for sure?
Yes. And everybody was upset. Well, you know, we're going to have to go pick up our own mail.
Who was president at that time?
Bob Fosner.
Had you observed any interaction between Patrick and a mail delivery person?
Other than him standing outside her truck taking a picture of her.
So you did see something?
Yes,
How many times did you see that?
once.
And when did you see it?
I don't recall the date.
I assume it was, oh, I shouldn't assume. Was it prior to the time that you had the conversation with Maldonado?
It was prior to that, yes.
And I'm sorry, I assumed facts, not in evidence. That was prior to the time when you went down and talked to someone at the post office department?
Yes.
Okay. Did the post office department employee tell you what they were going to do in response to the situation to determine whether or not it was continuing? Did they say anything about future action?
They said they were going to remove the mail carrier to a different route, put somebody else on there, and hopefully that'll clear up the situation. That didn't happen.
That didn't happen?
No, I didn't see that change over any time because I kept seeing her there. And then finally, one day, she's no longer there. Somebody else was there.
So the delivery person, well, you don't know whether it happened or not. It might just been one of those government things where they take forever to get it
Right,
done. Okay.
right.
The reason I asked you about your awareness of the issues in this case, and I was asking you about your kid's lawsuit, is because I want to make sure that I understand your position, which is that you believe, in your opinion, that Patrick is on drugs of some kind. That's what's causing the misbehavior that you observed.
Mm-hmm.
That if he were disabled by reason of a mental disability, everything in this situation would constitute an unfair attempt to deprive a disabled person of housing. Did I get it right?
Calls for legal conclusion. I don't.
Okay, just trying to cut the chase.
Can you rephrase it?
Sure. It appears from everything that we've said here, the fact that you want him out of the building, you're prepared to take action to get him out, that you're doing that because he has anger issues, not because he's mentally disabled. And if he is mentally disabled, you would be in the wrong.
Objection,
that-
argumentative, compound.
Is that correct?
Compound, extremely compound.
Is that correct?
Do you know
No.
how to answer that question?
What?
He said
It's
no.
multi-layered.
He just answered it. No, I'm not right. What's wrong with my analysis?
Is his disability his excuse for his behavior?
No, I'm asking you a question.
I'm asking you.
Sure.
Is it an excuse for his behavior?
It could be a reason.
But is it an excuse for it?
Depends.
So if he causes harm to somebody, it's an excuse to say, I'm bipolar.
Are
You're
you-
still going to jail. But I'm sorry, you killed the person, but you're still going to jail.
It may be unfair to engage in this kind of a discussion with you. I recognize your attorney's objection, it being compound and all that mess, okay?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, the elements of this case are that you want him out of the building and you're taking steps to force him out, correct?
I'm not
Objection.
taking any steps to force him out. I have a restraining order against Mr. McGarland. He's got a problem with that, okay? The board wants him out because of his continuous violent actions against members of the association. They have a responsibility to protect the association. And if somebody is in there that is creating a huge problem, then yes, we have to take action, whether he's disabled or not. There's a little girl across the hall from Patrick with Down syndrome. Not a problem with her. She's a little loud. Sometimes people hear her bouncing and stuff, but we put up with it. The guy on the first floor is no legs. Another one on the second floor, blind. They're all disabled. They don't come around and start screaming and banging and threatening people. What gives him the right to do that? Oh, I'm bipolar. His mother didn't know he was bipolar for years and years. You don't get it in one day. You're born with it. It's nothing that is, something that you can just throw up and say, oh yeah, here, I'm bipolar, this is my excuse. When did he find out he had bipolar? In 2012? They didn't find out he had it when he went to jail? And nobody mentioned a word? They do physical testing on people. Nobody knows. And all of a sudden here, all this time goes by, and all this time goes by, and he's perfectly okay until we file for a second restraining order, and he's bipolar. Guess what? I have a hard time buying that, because it sounds like you've hired a doctor that came up with some really good analysis and said, he's bipolar. After how many sessions? We haven't seen his past records. I question those.
But you would agree that if he was bipolar, your position would change.
I would have a second look, and I would get a second opinion
From another doctor.
from another doctor.
And if that convinced you that he was bipolar, would your position change?
These are doctors. They should know.
The question, though, is would your position change?
Does it
Right.
excuse his conduct?
Nothing excuses the conduct. The conduct is not excusable.
Even if it's remediated by medication?
He's been on medication and he still does things. So how do you say, well, what if he doesn't take his medication?
That's a different issue.
Yeah, so is this.
That's a different issue. If he takes his medication, you would have to reassess your position, correct?
Everybody will assess the reposition on it. They have to look at it logically and say, okay, this is what it is. But you also have somebody that you can throw out and say, hey, it's not an excuse. If he doesn't take his medication, he's back in the same boat, and we're all sitting here in the same problem. And it's not something that you can just say, oh, here's a pill, take it. It's a magic pill. If he doesn't take it, then what?
And the problem, if he doesn't take it, at least so far as we know historically, is that he is offensive, he's rude, he says, fuck you, and he gives you the finger, and he yells at you, but he doesn't touch you.
No, but he wants you to. There's a difference between baiting.
Listen to the question. He doesn't touch you, does he?
May
No.
misstate prior
You're
testimony.
afraid of him, right?
Hmm?
You're afraid of him, though, right?
Absolutely. And I back away from him.
And you believe that the other people in the building are afraid of him, correct?
Correct.
But as it stands, you would agree that you're not aware of anything involving, you use the word violent, but what is in fact happening is he's rude, obnoxious, and offensive and threatening. But he hasn't touched anybody to your knowledge, correct?
May misstate prior testimony. I believe he touched Joe in the elevator with a pizza box.
And,
With the exception of the pizza box
And-
assault,
And the
he has
car.
not touched anyone.
and
And the car.
he reached in the car to grab me.
He didn't touch you.
Yeah, if I didn't duck down in the other seat,
He didn't touch you.
he tried.
How much does the car weigh?
7,200 pounds,
What kind of car is it?
Rolls Royce.
And when there was a leak in the garage, did you tell the board, do you know how much it costs to repaint a Rolls Royce?
Well,
Wait, what?
Did you ask the board, when the garage was leaking, do you know how much it costs to repaint a Rolls Royce?
no. It just
So you
buffs
deny,
out.
you
It-
deny making that statement.
Yeah, it just buffs out.
It's clear coat.
It's clear. It's not, the paint is
That-
melted into the steel.
That may well be, but the question has to do with your statement. Did you say to the board, do you know how much it costs to repaint a Rolls Royce?
I may have said that in passing to him,
Okay.
but not saying, hey, here's a bill. If I were to paint that car, it'd be $15,000, $20,000.
Did you take part at all in any changes to the board's latest edition of the bylaws
No,
or the CCNRs?
no.
And when I say at all, I mean, did you talk to the board about changes in the regulations?
No,
That is to say, since you were a president, right?
right.
Did you do anything like that while you were president? Did you change the bylaws or the CCNRs at all?
No, we made an exception.
Did you ever
This is an exception.
did you ever confront Patrick's grandmother about her dog?
Yes.
Could you tell me what happened?
There was a person who was buying a unit which Julie Robles finally bought. And they had a little tiny Shih Tzu dog. And it's a very well-known CPA in San Mateo. and he and his wife were coming down to take a look at this place. They looked at it, and they put an offer on it, and then we sent him a copy of the CCNRs, and it said no dogs allowed. Then I got a letter, and it said, listen, there's a lady here on the first floor who's got a dog. And you're saying we can't have a dog. So you just winding up making up rules as you go along or whatever. And so if in that stack is the letter I gave Verna, allowing her to keep the dog. I called the board together. There was Mary Janey, Jean Gish, Claire Coleman, and Gail Galligan, and myself. So we had the 5 board members. And we made an exception. I wrote out a letter to Verna allowing her to keep her dog, and that the board felt that was in her best or well interest to her health that she was able to keep that dog. And therefore the board is allowing you to keep your dog, or keep baby, as I put it.
Did you ever get into a confrontation with either Nancy, Patrick, or Verna about that issue prior to that?
Never. I got along very well with Verna. It's in the stack of papers that we submitted to you.
Do you have any questions you wanted to ask today?
3-sentence thing.
Hmm?
It's a short letter. Short letter.
Or and I
The one-pager.
waive time
Yeah,
for you
I think I've
to
seen it.
ask some questions if you desire to do so. It's 3:37. You want to do that now? Take a break? Okay. Well, I'd like to ask if we could just interrupt my questions, because Mr. Baum has some questions he wanted to ask you as well.
Mhm. No, let's just go.
Yeah, maybe it's.
Very bad.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, no, I'm ready.
Good afternoon. My name's Rick Baum. I represent both Patrick and Nancy Mackerlane. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit since the 2 lawyers before me have covered a lot of ground. When did you first meet Patrick?
I met Patrick in the garage at 110 Park, and when he came in with his grandmother's car, and I was talking to Jim Quill, and that was, I believe it was November, the end of October of 2006.
So your first meeting with him was very close in time to when he started to work at Park Plaza.
Right.
How many conversations can you recall having with him before he started to work?
2.
Those conversations went fine?
Yes.
And in the for the remainder of October and then November and into December of 2006, you had no issues with Patrick's behavior, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you didn't have any problems with his behavior until that time that he came to see you after he had seen Mr. Beeling.
Correct.
There was a board meeting note that we looked at earlier which referred to Patrick having received positive reviews from residents, correct?
Correct.
Can you estimate for me how many people said positive things about him?
I know 3 of them that did.
And why did you include that in the board meeting minutes?
Why didn't I include the 3 people?
No. Why did you take the time to make a note that Patrick was performing well?
To give positive reinforcement for somebody to say, hey, thank you, you're doing something, and he sees the minutes, so it says, hey, you're doing a good job.
Was he living there at the time?
No.
Then why do you believe then he would see the meeting minutes?
Because he puts them in the mailroom.
So they're posted.
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that Patrick living at Park Plaza has affected the value of any of the properties there?
You know, there are some people that did not disclose that there's a lawsuit, and that may bite them later. But yes, you are to disclose that the association has a lawsuit pending against a resident.
Do you personally have any knowledge that Patrick's residency at Park Plaza has had a negative effect on property values there?
I don't know.
Has anybody told you that?
No.
There, I'm going to have the deposition notice marked next
There we
in
go.
line.
Thank you. It's just going to be...
I don't know which number we're at now. 51. Mr. Schreurs, I've handed you a document that we're marking as Exhibit 51, which is the renotice of your deposition, which brings you here today. Have you seen this document before?
Yes.
And you will see that from...
Except with corrected address.
I'm most interested in the request to produce documents that begins at page 3 and runs through page 8. You'll see that there are 37 different categories of documents that you are asked to bring today.
Right.
What did you, and I hope to avoid going through these category by category, but can you generally tell me what you did to try and find documents that were responsive to these various categories?
I had a file box with binders in it, and the binders are numbered, and it has everything that I had that you have there. And that's not just stuff related to Patrick, but it's related to the board, it's related to whatever, and I just printed it all. So that's it.
Were these file boxes, I believe you just used the
Right.
term, these were things that already existed?
Yes.
So that this was sort of your Park Plaza file?
Yes.
So did you do anything, and let me back up, when did you create those file boxes?
In 2009.
So did you do anything to search for documents that are responsive to the request, which is part of Exhibit 51, apart from simply providing the documents that were in those file boxes?
I provided everything that I had, that you requested. If I had it, you got it. Certain things I couldn't produce because I don't have it. I don't have access to his employment records, don't have access to his records that are in the boardroom. But everything else I have. And there are certain things that I did make copies of and then turned the rest over to the board.
Let me try and ask the question a different way. You created these file boxes in 2009,
Yes.
and you've turned those over to be produced, correct?
Yes.
Did you do anything in the last month to look for documents that were responsive to this request?
Yes.
Objection has to be answered.
What did you do?
I went and I started looking for things that I didn't think I had. Number one, you wanted pictures that I had taken of Patrick. And I've taken many, many pictures of the door of Patrick's, but never of Patrick. I've taken pictures of Unit 104's door, which had just gobs of stuff on there. I've taken a picture of Patrick's door on 305, which had all sorts of stuff on it. Pictures of contract workers that he'd taken pictures of Sherry Berenstein flipping them off, pictures of the plumber. So I just took pictures of all that stuff, which is plastered all over the wall on his door. I put those in there. I've taken pictures of Kimberly Gott's driver's license, which he posted on his, of all people, his door. And so, I mean, I just took pictures, gave them to you. There they are.
How about emails? Did you go back and look for any
Yes.
additional emails?
Yes, and you got those.
Where did you look for those?
I went home and I checked in our garage area and looked in storage. I found the box that had a couple of other pieces in there, and I was able to go ahead and pull all that out, went through it, and I even found the old CCNRs and an old, prior to 1999 records.
Did you look at, or let me back up, what is the email address that your wife would use, that you would occasionally use, also, and sign
And
Joe at the bottom?
That's Cynthia at Schreur'sLaw.com.
How long, to your knowledge, has she had that email address?
10, 15 years.
What did you search that email address for any
Yes.
documents that were responsive?
Yes, and all that's in there.
And when did you conduct that search?
All I had to do is type in McGarland and it all
I'm
came
sorry,
up.
I asked when did you
Oh,
do that?
I did that. God, when I dropped those off.
It's in the past 60 days.
Yeah, it was 60 days ago.
How far back to your knowledge, do the emails go on that email address?
It goes back to 2000 and I think it's 2009.
And then you had an email address that was just yours?
Yes,
And what is that?
and that was schurs@netwiz.net.
How long have you had that email address?
That's no longer any good. I had that for up until, I would say 2003, 2004, and then I got rid of it because it was just spamming, getting nothing but garbage kicking in.
After 2003, did you use any email to send anything related to Park Plaza other than your wife's email account?
No.
Apart from the one conversation that you talked about earlier when you were on the phone with Nancy Mackerlane on the day when the incident occurred with Mr. Beeling and then with you, have you had subsequent conversations with Nancy about Patrick?
Yeah, the very next day.
What occurred during that conversation?
She wanted me to reconsider and hire Patrick.
Was this a pleasant conversation, a testy conversation?
It was a pleasant conversation that, you know, that she was concerned, as every mother would be, but she was very concerned about the fact that her son wasn't going to get the job and I wasn't going to give it to him after what he had done, that, you know, he can go ahead and apply to the board, he can do what he wants, but I'm tied. I can't do anything about it. You walk in, you hand us the keys, you don't complete the employment process, you didn't even turn in your application for employment plus your resume, nothing was turned in. And, you know, and this was a start of an interview process. And then the board, you know, said, well, where's things at? He never, he came and said, you know, that when he dropped off the stuff, I told Nancy, he said he definitely is refusing a drug test and he's damn well not going to do a background credit check.
And he was rude to you?
Yes.
And you went out on the line for him to recommend him for this job, right?
Yes.
You were angry with him, weren't you?
Not really angry. I was more upset with him and disappointed because now I would have to go back and start emptying the garbage cans.
Did you believe, did you feel that this was embarrassing for you, that you had recommended Patrick for this job and he turns around and tells you and Mr. Beeling to fuck off?
Yeah. No, it was embarrassing. And then I had to go into the boardroom and say, hey, it didn't work. Sorry, we're starting from scratch. And we're already 30 days into this thing, or 90 days into it. And now we don't have a resident manager. We don't have anything else in place. So now it's going to cost us to have somebody else come do the work.
He, during that confrontation, or that discussion, when he said he wasn't going to work for you, did he say fuck you or fuck off? Something
Fuck
like that?
off.
When was the last time anybody told you to fuck off before then?
A long time ago.
It's tough to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
You still hold it against him, right?
No.
You don't?
No. What I hold against him is the constant swearing at me when I'm driving down the street or if I'm walking somewhere. That's what I hold against him. If he would have just come in and said fuck off and then leave, and then that was it, and then if he wanted to move into next door and never said another word to me, that's fine.
After this one conversation with Nancy the day following that incident, have you had any other subsequent discussions with her about Patrick?
Never.
Do you know if Patrick had ever received any treatment for whatever his condition was, whether it be anger management or something else, at any time?
He said he broke his leg, and he had gotten treatment for that.
Okay, I'm talking about for psychological
No.
type issues. You don't
No.
know.
No.
It's correct that you don't know. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Earlier, you were talking about, I think you said there were 3 incidents involving Julie Robles. And I only was able to take 2 of them down. There was the incident waiting for the elevator where he refused to get off. And then there was a second occasion where she had groceries and she was going into the elevator.
Right.
Okay, what was the third incident?
The third incident was basically where he had posted things on his door that were inflammatory to Julie Robles.
What was posted?
That she smokes his pot, and she knows that that he had pot, and and then Mokri smokes his pot. I mean, it was like, have you seen it, the door? So it was like, and then Stooge on the other end. So it was kind of a different array of things.
Okay, so so there was no, this was not a physical confrontation of
No.
any sort?
No. But she had in a restraining order that he could not post anything, take pictures of her, blah, 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 and all this. So that was in violation of her restraining order.
Do you think you need to enforce other people's restraining orders?
Do I?
Yes, sir.
No.
Was there a point in time where you adjusted your daily schedule to avoid Patrick?
Absolutely.
When did you do that?
I started doing that in 2007, about the end of 2007 when he started hanging around more. And I would wind up sometimes leaving at 6 in the morning, then I'd leave at 8, and then 7:30, and then my wife and I would hop in the car, and then we'd drive to our new office on Anza Boulevard, and we walk around the lagoon and stuff, and then go back to the office. And then we had a workout room with a sauna and a shower, so we would just change our clothes over there and then be ready for work. So we did vary our schedules. I was never home at exactly 5 o'clock. I could be home at 5:30, 6, 4 o'clock, 3. I would scatter it at various hours.
Sometimes your work would dictate when you would come and go, correct?
That's right.
So there were times that you might come home at 6, but it had nothing to do with Patrick. It was simply a result of some work obligation.
No, because I could work out of the house too.
You're on a regular schedule now, correct?
No.
Are you still?
Well, I'm doing the 7:30 in the morning, and his car's still there, so I leave, and so I don't run into him. He's not there, and then I leave, and when I come back, I always try to get back before 5 because he's not there.
Is this your current schedule? Is that inconveniencing you in any manner?
Not yet.
And how long generally have you been on that schedule?
About 2 months.
What was your schedule before then?
Schedule before was I'd leave the house around 6 o'clock and be back by 6:30, 7, and the cars are always there. And then 7 o'clock, he's always downstairs doing something. Sometimes he'll come out of his storage locker, and he's got a chair sitting there, and then I see the lever of the storage locker open up, and he comes out.
We talked, and I apologize, I'm going to be skipping around
Okay.
a bit, so if you're not following
Okay.
the context of a question, let me know, okay?
Okay.
There was some issue before about whether Patrick was an employee or not, but would you agree that you hired him?
I hired him as a part-time helper. Not the board.
After your confrontation with Patrick, when he said he wasn't going to work any longer, did you report to Mr. Beeling that you felt threatened?
Yes.
And why did you feel threatened?
Because of the way he came up and was jeering and with his fist clenched, ready to strike, and after he had handed me the keys, and he looked like he was ready for a confrontation. And that's when I backed up and I closed the door, and then he yelled, banged on the door and yelled, "You have my fucking check by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock tomorrow." And then I was told that I was supposed to give the check to, his mom said I was supposed to give the check to Millie Zakula.
How far away were you from him when this occurred?
A foot and a half.
Did you step back away from him?
Yes. I stepped back into my unit.
And did he follow you into your unit?
No.
So could you have stepped 3 feet further back?
Oh, then he'd be in my unit.
But you didn't
No.
step further
No.
back? You held your ground?
Yes.
So you got all the locks changed at Park Plaza, correct?
Yes.
We talked about that a little bit. Patrick did return the master key, did he not?
After his mother told him to get down there and drop off the master key.
You're 65.
Yes.
Do you consider that elderly?
With my heart condition, yeah.
I'm just wondering that there's been some claim that you've made of Patrick doing certain things directed toward elderly people. I'm trying to get a sense from you what you consider to be elderly.
Anybody over 65.
There was also some mention that you would have to take or did have to take nitroglycerin after certain interactions with Patrick.
Yes.
How often do you take nitroglycerin?
4 times a day.
Whether you have a confrontation or not?
Oh, no. When I have a confrontation with Patrick, I take it 4 times a day.
Is it something that you take every day?
No.
How often has your doctor prescribed that?
The
And
doctor.
what I mean is it something that you're supposed to take, once a day, once a week, as needed?
As needed.
Have you taken it on occasions in the past 5 years, apart from interactions with Patrick?
I took it about an hour from here, an hour ago.
Have there been, and this is simply, I have no idea how
Yeah.
often you might take that.
And that's, if it gets stressful, then I take one.
Okay. In a Say in the past month, how often have you taken it?
4 times.
Has Patrick ever kept you from using your parking spot?
No,
Has he ever prevented you from using any storage that you have available there?
no. Has he kept me from leaving? Yes.
Has he ever kept you from entering your, using the elevator to get up to your apartment?
Yes.
Well, when did he do that?
He did that where he just lingers by the door, and I won't go near the door, and I'll sit and I'll wait, and he'll just sit there and watch. And after a while, he'll start going into the room because there's 2 doors. So he has to get through the fire door first, and then there's the 2 elevators. So as that door is closed, I come in and I open up the door, and Patrick's standing right there with his dog, and it had to be 15 minutes later.
When was that?
This was back in 2008.
Has it happened since then?
No. And then the cursing went from there on.
Do you think there's anything that Nancy could do to control Patrick's behavior?
I don't know.
Do you consider yourself to be, and I understand you're not a lawyer, but familiar with the CC&Rs?
Yes.
Do you think Nancy's done anything to, in your opinion, understanding you're not a lawyer, to violate them?
Objection calls for legal conclusion.
That she's violated them?
Yes.
I think she's violated the CC&Rs under the nuisance code, where she has a responsibility to control her renters. And Patrick is a renter of hers, not a owner. He owns a unit that he rents. So she has a responsibility to make sure that he behaves and he conforms to the CC&Rs.
And how could she do that?
Objection calls for legal conclusion.
Just on a practical level, how could she do that?
Talk to him, say, hey, back off of these people, you know, let them just do their own thing, just do your own thing, just stay away, just, you know, come and go as you need to do, but don't get in their faces, stay away from them.
Have you told Nancy that you believe he has anger issues?
Yes,
Have you told Nancy that she needs to seek help for Patrick to
No.
address those anger issues?
no.
What, to your knowledge, has Patrick done to strike that? I believe we looked at a document earlier today. Don't recall which exhibit number it is, but it was the letter to Mr. Wagstaff, the district attorney.
Yes.
In that letter, the 3rd paragraph reads, last September 11, 2009, we obtained a restraining order against Patrick McErlane. While his conduct is not as bad as before, he has violated the order on at least 18 occasions. Do you recall that? Was that a truthful statement?
Yes.
So between September of 2009 and August of 2010, Patrick's behavior had improved. Would you agree?
Yes.
And certainly in the last 2 years, his conduct has improved. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Exhibit 50.
Thank you. In another document that we looked at today, there was a log or a chronology of events that you had created that detailed conduct that you found bad or offensive or threatening or hostile by Patrick. You have in mind the document that I'm talking about? Does that document accurately and completely reflect all of the instances of bad behavior on Patrick's part from January 2007 through August of 2009?
With respect to his personal knowledge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You need to say yes or
Yes.
no. And did you, I wasn't clear from your testimony earlier, you started to prepare this for the purpose of documenting things so that you could obtain a temporary restraining order?
Correct.
And you did that, was that on the advice of an attorney?
Yes. My wife.
I didn't ask.
I've been trying to tell him not to volunteer information. That's why I took him in the other room.
And this document, again, the one that details the bad behavior on Patrick's part, that was prepared contemporaneously with when the behavior occurred?
Yes.
As we sit here right now, are there instances of objectionable behavior that you have witnessed directed toward others, not directed toward you or your wife, but directed toward other residents of Park Plaza that we have not discussed?
Yeah, there were, Tim Ho was one where he was just screaming and screaming at him, filming him and stuff, and I came in and parked my car, and he was over on the back side, and I went inside, and then later on I talked to Tim Ho, and he indicated that indeed there was a confrontation that went down, and he explained to me what happened. So that was it.
Did you personally witness that?
No.
Then I'm interested in
I
those.
heard the screaming,
Okay.
which was more laughing, screaming. Patrick was screaming, he was laughing.
Are there any other incidents that you witnessed that involved other residents of Park Plaza?
Not other residents, but some contractors.
Who?
Trinidad Plumbing Service. They were replacing piping and stuff, and Patrick was harassing them and telling them to get the hell out of here. He's getting somebody to take care of it. And so I was parking my car, walked over to him. Patrick saw me, hopped on his skateboard, and took off.
Approximately when was that?
That was in 2010.
Are there any other instances involving third parties or vendors?
Squeaky clean. We're cleaning. Patrick is in the social room, and he is just going off on this guy, and just told him to get the hell out and take all your stuff. I don't want you in the building. Get out of here and stuff. And then he yelled, "And you take that little fag with you." and referring to his other guy that was cleaning. And so I happened to come out of the mailroom, and I'm standing there, and I said, call the police. So he did.
In the last year, has Patrick done anything that has interfered with your use or enjoyment of your property?
I have not enjoyed the property. I don't go to the pool anymore. I don't go to the social room. I don't go to the workout rooms. I come home and I lock my door.
You're that scared?
Yep,
You with a restraining order?
yep.
Even though you saw him, you passed by him in the hallway and you didn't feel threatened by him?
No, I stepped aside.
But you
I
didn't.
moved.
You didn't feel threatened though, correct?
Correct.
But you come home now
But
and lock yourself in your
but there are so
condo.
many people that.
Here, just
Go ahead,
Yeah,
finish
yeah.
it.
No, yeah, I was just going to answer his. Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Sure. I'm just trying to understand that right now you're. Do you still generally feel threatened by him?
Yes.
Even though you didn't on this occasion when you passed him in the hallway?
No,
That's correct.
that's correct.
Can we take a short break?
Yeah.
Oh,
Make a head call.
Let's do that.
yes, of course.
Too much water.
Okay, we are off the record at 4:17 p.m. Okay, we are back on the record at 4:26 p.m.
Mr. Schreurs, one of the reasons that you resigned early as president was because of this incident involving Patrick, correct?
Correct.
Did the other members of the board ask you to step down?
No.
You cared about how they viewed you, correct?
Correct.
And this was an embarrassing situation for you.
Yes.
We looked at an exhibit earlier, Exhibit 42, which perhaps you could take a quick look. I'm happy to try and find it for you. There. This is Bates marked PPT 1001 through 1006, and I just want to look at the first page. You wanted to amend the meeting minutes from the previous board minutes, correct?
Right.
Because you wanted to qualify somehow the reflection in the board minutes of Patrick and the job that he had done, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a yes?
Yes.
And in the following paragraph, then, there's a sentence that ends, he is telling a jaded story, and again, omitting material facts. Why, in your opinion, was the story he telling jaded?
He was telling people that he was fired, that we owed him $15,000, that we had lied to him, that he wasn't a full-time employee, and he wanted his job.
Oh, he was telling people then that he wanted the job and had been fired?
Yep, and that he had already been hired for the job, we owe him $15,000, and we owe him back pay and vacation pay.
Now, if I look at the second page of Exhibit 42, again, this is part of an email thread. It's dated January 10, 2007.
Right.
What is your best estimate for when the first page of this email was sent? That's the one that appears on PPT 1001.
This is on...
The reason that I ask is that it looks as though we don't have the very top
Right.
of this email, and
Right.
so I'm asking, when do you think it was that you drafted this?
Well, obviously I drafted it after the January meeting, and it had to be right after the meeting, because January 10th is the next follow-up, so I would say it'd probably have to be maybe the January 9th or the 8th, something around there.
In your mind, this whole situation involving Patrick and his hiring and applying for the full-time position and then telling you or Mr. Beeling to fuck off, that this was a catastrophe, right?
Yes.
Had you ever personally experienced a situation that you thought was similar to this, a catastrophe?
Objection, vague as to time.
Ever?
Never.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Sharon had a quick question.
Hello again, Mr.
Hi.
Schreurs. Now that Rick, Mr. Baum asked you this question about the dates, I think we need to clean that up again. Okay, so on Exhibit 42, if you would look at that again. I think you just said that that was after the January meeting, but the January meeting was on January 18th, according to Exhibit 43.
No, I said it has to be around January 8th because all the other emails fall in line on around the 10th.
Okay, the date that Patrick went to Beeling's office was January 9th,
Okay.
okay? And your email that we're trying to date says that you contacted San Bruno locksmith yesterday.
Okay,
Is that
so
not-
that was right afterwards. So that would be the 8th.
The 8th is before the 9th.
When did San Bruno locks show up?
So if the firing or Patrick quitting happened on the 9th, then these emails came on
On
the
the-
10th, right?
Right, so
And
this
so
was
yours
the
is
9th.
after that. You're responding to an email that's dated the 10th,
Right.
and we're trying to place how far after the 10th it was. And you say you contacted San Bruno locksmith yesterday. So
Right.
didn't you contact the locksmith the day after?
I call him that evening.
The evening after
After
your
Patrick.
confrontation with
yes,
Patrick?
after he gave me the keys. That's when I called them. And then they came down immediately. And they
Okay.
changed all the master locks, and then there was a few locks that they didn't get to that they came and did the next day.
Okay, so they came the very next day after the confrontation with Patrick.
No. They came that day we had the confrontation with Patrick, that evening. They were there
Okay.
till 10, 11 o'clock.
Okay, so
And
that
changed
that
the
would be
mast-
that would be the 9th.
That'd be the 9th.
Okay.
And then they came back the following day to finish the garbage room, the pool room, and the basement areas where we had the electrical and stuff because they didn't have enough time to do both.
Okay, so that would be the 10th.
Right.
Okay, and then since your email is saying you contacted them yesterday, then this could have been the 10th or the 11th?
Yes.
All right. When you were talking to Mr. Howie, and you said that you do accommodate some disabled people at Park Plaza, correct?
We accommodate all, not some.
So would you accommodate a disabled person even if that person's condition includes being disturbing to you?
Objection argumentative.
I mean, disturbing to me.
So the difference being, it seemed like you described people who have physical disabilities. Those wouldn't disturb you, would they?
No.
Okay, and the little girl with Down syndrome, that's not disturbing to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Someone
would you
attacking me is disturbing to me.
Okay, so
There's a
if,
difference.
so if somebody's
So
mental...
I want to really clear that up. If I'm being attacked by someone, that is disturbing to me, whether he's bipolar or not. He's not doing what the doctor told him to do, otherwise he wouldn't be attacking me, would he?
Okay, and if he's swearing at you or being obnoxious...
Being
but
aggressive.
Wait, let her
but not
finish, Joe.
physically threatening, do you think that you don't have to put up with that kind of mental disability?
Objection argumentative. Misstates prior testimony.
Do you have an answer?
I wouldn't have to put up with that, no.
Okay. Have you told people that Patrick is addicted to methamphetamine?
No,
Okay. Did you know your wife has said that?
possibly,
Okay. And do you have any evidence of that?
none.
Okay. And did you know your wife has told people that Patrick gets a trust check every month and spends it on meth?
No.
Did you know that Patrick doesn't get it, doesn't even have a trust?
Objection calls for
Doesn't
speculation.
make a difference to me.
And I'm asking him what he knows.
I don't
that's
know.
fine, but it calls for speculation.
Do you feel free to say that Patrick takes drugs other than marijuana, whether you know that's true or not?
He always comes in high and mighty.
You
And,
don't-
and supposedly he doesn't drink, so that we rule out alcohol because we believe him.
And you don't have any expertise as far as detecting whether somebody has a mental disability.
I think
No.
we already covered that.
Do you consider yourself sensitive to profanity
No,
or to vulgarity?
no,
Okay. Did you hear a lot of that in the military?
yes.
That incident with Verna's dog, how old was Verna at the time that you wanted to institute the rule of no dogs?
Let the record reflect that, here,
No, I'm
here,
just
Joe,
asking
Joe,
a
Joe,
question.
Joe.
Now I'm giving you the letter.
I'm asking you a
No.
question. You need to answer my
Okay,
question.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
How old was Verna at that time?
97?
Okay. Do you recall Nancy threatening you to take you to the newspaper and tell them that you were trying to take away the dog of a 97-year-old woman?
No, never. She's also had a problem.
I think you may need to look at Schreurs 737,
I'm
Sharon.
sorry, what did you just say?
I think that's also a problem here.
Who has a problem?
If somebody is telling me that I said that to him, then they also have a problem.
So you're saying that Nancy McElwain has a problem?
Yeah, Sharon, why don't you look at the letter?
Look at
I have to look
the,
at a letter.
It is completely contrary to exactly your line of questioning.
I don't need to look at a letter. I'm asking him a question.
It's argumentative. It's completely
I'm asking
argumentative.
him what he meant when he just said that Nancy McElwain had a problem.
Nancy McElwain fabricated that I was going to go to she was going to the press, or that I was trying to take away her dog. I allowed her to have that dog since January.
Here.
You allowed her to
Since-
have the dog after she threatened, correct?
January 2005, I
Right.
allowed her to have the dog.
Correct.
Patrick wasn't in the picture at all prior to that. The unit was up for sale next door. The lady saw the dog, pointed out Verna's dog. We said no dogs allowed. So we
I
had to
understand.
do
I didn't say
something.
that Patrick was in the picture.
Okay? But we can't be fabricating things.
Okay, so you're saying that Nancy McElwain would be lying if she said that.
Yes.
In your opinion, were the Utterbacks good resident managers?
Not particularly.
Okay. And did they get fired?
No, they left.
Did one of them have a drinking problem?
Not that I know of. We didn't socialize with them.
On Exhibit 42, on the last page, or I'm sorry, second to the last, page 1005, I think it is. Mr. Beeling says, do you see that second to the last paragraph at the bottom? He says, yesterday after meeting with you in executive session, I made at your direction a phone call to Patrick. And I think you told me earlier that there was no executive session. Is that right?
That's true.
So Mr. Beeling made that up?
No, I think it might have been with Bob Fostner and Mary Janey and a couple of other board members in an executive session. I was not present at the time.
Okay. So do you know if there's minutes of that executive session?
I don't know, whatever the board has.
When you were the president, did you keep minutes from executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever tried, since the beginning of 2007, have you ever tried being nice to Patrick?
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
Came walking by his door one time and I heard he was in the hospital. So I knocked on the door to see if he was okay. And he comes flying out of the door, and Julie Robles was in there. And what the fuck do you want, you motherfucker? Hey, somebody said you were in the hospital. I just wanted to see if you're okay. And get the fuck out of here, you know. And I walked down the hallway and I left, and he was coming after me, and Julie pulled his hand back and says, no, stay here. That motherfucker, and that was it.
Did he leave his doorway?
He went back into his unit.
Okay. So he left his condo at one point and then went back in?
Yes, he came out in the hallway to confront me.
Okay.
And all I wanted to do is, somebody said he was in the hospital. He was in there for 5 days with a lung problem. And I heard noise in there and I knocked on it. And I said, Patrick, are you all right? Nice guy. Boom. Backfires.
Any other opportunities you had to be nice?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I think when we were having Norma Horwitz deposition, she was a little impatient with the whole thing. I can see her getting a little impatient at this point. I think she said this thing is all stupid. You kind of, sorry, what did I say?
Norma.
Thank you.
Same thing.
Sorry.
See, I agree with you. Okay. She said it was stupid. You think that too?
Not particularly.
Okay. I'm looking at a report that you produced today from the Burlingame Police Department. I'll just read it to you and ask you what your comment about it is. Has to do with reports made to the police department. These incidents include rude behavior, annoying telephone calls, defamation, slander, indirect threats, unsolved vandalisms, and mail thefts. BPD, meaning Burlingame Police Department, has taken 2 police reports for annoying telephone calls and for indirect threats. Officer Roberts took report number blah, blah, blah for Mackerlane's indirect threats. Mackerlane had angry outbursts during the contact, which the officer digitally recorded, but in the officer's opinion, there was no crime. There have been a number of calls for service at the complex. In an email, the Schreurs wrote to Sheriff Greg Monks. They inaccurately complained to him BPD did not file reports or notes on call logs. In fact, Officer Wee investigated their telephone calls, which were made from payphones. I attached the letters to this report and advised the reporting party to have the residents call BPD when needed. Do you have any comment on that report?
No, except we never did contact and write Greg Monks, and I don't know where he got that. I told him we had spoken to Greg Monks, but we had not written to Greg Monks.
It says email to the Schreurs wrote, so
No.
maybe an email?
No, never written to him.
When you're making a complaint about a violation of a restraining order for parking Nancy's car in 104, what did you really think you would get from making that police report?
Nothing.
What were you looking for?
I thought it was Patrick's car.
But what was the, what you...
They have two cars,
Right.
identical.
I know, don't worry about that. That's not my question. My
Okay.
question has to do with, there's a restraining order.
Yes.
The car is not supposed to be parked there. You report to the police that the car is parked there. What do you expect to happen? What are the police supposed to do about that?
Come over and write a report.
And then what?
Do whatever they have to do. Write it up, go away. They just know that it's there. That's their action.
Did you expect Patrick to be prosecuted for it?
No.
Did you expect the court to find him?
Has he been prosecuted on 18 of the violations ever? No.
What do you mean, no? Yes, he has. In your declaration, you talked about his prosecutions. He has been prosecuted. You know that.
You got a plea bargain.
He got a plea bargain out of it. That's not prosecution. You know.
Did he
And-
get a jail sentence out of it?
You were his lawyer.
No.
Come on,
I'm
Step.
asking him the questions.
No. We never heard from the DA. We have no idea what the deal was.
You don't know what happened, right?
Right.
Did you send a lawyer over there to check on what was going on?
We did.
Nope.
I didn't ask
They
you,
did.
Grant.
No.
Did you?
Nope. We had no idea. All the DA says, we'll call you as a witness. I sat there for 4.5 hours in the DA's room over there while this was going on, and then they come back and say, okay, everything's settled, and we went home. What do you mean everything's settled?
So you don't know that Patrick went to jail because of the complaint that you made?
Nope. Nope. Nobody told us. Not one person. Not the DA, and we've gone through 3 DAs in the meantime during this whole thing.
Did
Julie Robles wasn't aware of what happened. We thought everything was over with and done.
Other than the letter to Steve Wagstep, did you have any personal conversations with anyone at the DA's office?
Nope, just
You-
Steve.
Did you have a conversation with him
Yes,
about this?
yes.
What did you tell him?
This is before we filed our restraining order.
Right.
I went and called and arranged a meeting with him. He met with me for about 10 minutes. I went ahead and followed his advice to go file for a restraining order, and then the DA will prosecute if he violates the restraining orders. And so we filed a restraining order.
So what you wanted to happen when he parked his car in the wrong spot was you wanted him to be prosecuted, right?
If he parked the car in the wrong spot that he wasn't supposed to park in, yes.
So you wanted him prosecuted for parking his car in 104,
Yes.
which is a space that's apparently owned by him now. Was it owned by him then?
Yep.
For parking in his own space, you wanted him prosecuted.
He can't be within 25 yards of my car or property.
Does that seem unfair to you at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
Considering that he would have been sitting there within 10 feet of me as opposed to 25 yards away from me, I felt comfortable 25 yards away and not 10 feet away.
I asked you this question before when we were in court, and that is, did Nancy and you ever have a conversation about you renting 305?
Yes, you asked me that.
Did you ever have a conversation with her about that topic?
I asked her mother, Verna, never Nancy.
What did you ask Verna?
I asked Verna back in 2005, and if she would be interested in renting out that unit since nobody was living there. And she says, oh no, I go up there every so often. I'll come down here during the summer months and go up there during the winter months. It's cooler, so I don't rent it out to anybody. But if he needs a place to stay for a little bit, he's more than happy to stay there. And she's talking about 2 weeks. And I says, oh, no, no, we're talking about moving into it. And she says, oh, no, no, dear, that's not going to happen.
When you say he, who are you referring to?
My son.
And that's your son who's disabled, correct?
Yes.
Let's say the girl who's there in the hallway who has, you indicated she was disabled. What issue does she have?
Down syndrome.
Okay. If she were to be destructive in the hallway, knock over furniture, stain the carpets, that sort of thing, would you object to that?
No. Parents are going to have to pay for it.
If she were to be screaming in the hallway, would you object to that?
No.
And the distinction between that and Patrick is that you don't believe he is disabled, correct?
Correct.
You believe he's a drug addict or something of that nature?
Yes.
Okay. If he were disabled and he were being medicated and he had a successful medication regimen and you believed that to be true, would you still want to kick him out of the building?
If I believed it was true, no.
Why not?
That is Patrick.
Pointing, for the record, to the police report.
The police reports, this is all Patrick. All this stuff. It's all Patrick.
You don't really mean that. It's a bunch of paperwork.
That's Patrick. He created it.
You don't even know what's in there.
Sure we do. He created it. So that is what we're dealing with. Okay, we're dealing with the fear of what is going on in our daily lives. Okay, if he were to come in his unit, go down the pool, go whatever it is, not a problem, have a good time, do whatever it is. But the minute he starts attacking, okay, and he will, then that is where we have a problem. And he does attack. For you to say, oh, geez, he's had all this therapy and treatment. 2 years of therapy doesn't make everybody well. If he goes every week, does he go every month? Does he take his medications?
Okay. We've gone into your qualifications to make a diagnosis, and apparently you don't have the qualifications to make a diagnosis in your opinion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But you would allow that a doctor might be able to make a correct diagnosis, correct?
Correct.
As I understand it, maybe you can confirm this, but just from your perspective, if a medication regimen were to change the behavior and the doctor were to tell you that that medication regimen is what you use for bipolar disorder, and in fact when it is used, the symptoms are reduced, would you be prepared to accept that as a true statement?
It depends on the doctor and his qualifications.
Do you know Dr. Tatomer?
No. No.
Well,
I do know several psychiatrists that have been my clients over the years, and I will tell you there are some that are good and then some that are bad. Some just medicate and that's off they go, and others wind up doing therapy and follow-up. Okay, I don't know some of these doctors. There's Peninsula Psychiatric, where the doctor who dealt with bipolar children just wind up getting convicted for 174 counts of child molestation. He was good.
Well, not really.
Yeah. So, but he was also head of the American Psychiatric Association. So how do you everybody can be put under scrutiny and question about anything. first you have to see it to believe it, and it's going to take time. And that's what we're saying. You might need time. He's not going to cure overnight. And this lovely little yellow pill just doesn't do it because Alice isn't 10 feet tall.
Okay, let's let Skip ask a question.
You can ask a question now, Skip. Scratch Alice.
She can't do that? At this time, what do you know about his medical regimen?
Nothing. Other than somebody says he's taking drugs.
Who said that?
You did.
So that's all you know about it now?
Yes.
So in order to be willing to accommodate Patrick and allow him to live in the unit, you would have to be convinced that his diagnosis was correct. Is that your testimony?
And that he is taking his drugs and seeing a psychiatrist on a regular basis with follow-up.
And that would do it?
Yep.
Notwithstanding his prior testimony based on conduct.
But if he changes his conduct, then you're going to have to reissue, because he might wind up going fine for a point and then drop back down, and then we'll be the victims again.
Would it be fair to say in your mind that, given that opinion, that no matter what happened, you would always want him out of the building?
No? No?
How could he possibly provide you with a proof of an effective, successful medication regimen that would satisfy you?
You'll have to report that to us under oath. I'm sure you probably can.
Who would have to report that?
You. You're his,
Well, I don't know.
You're his attorney.
I'm his attorney. I'm not his doctor.
Okay, so you don't know if he's seeing his doctor either.
But if his doctor told you that, would you be willing to accommodate him?
But his doctor is not bound as far as, I think you're bound a lot stronger than he is. I've seen too many doctors and mess up things. And one of them is when they can cover their own ass, they cover their ass.
Well, whose ass needs to be covered here?
I think ours,
Who's yours?
the people in the association, myself, my spouse, we need to be covered. We need some assurance that this is happening. It's not oh yeah, we've seen this doctor, and he's only been seeing it. You're born with bipolar, and you just wind up getting it the very next, after he winds up filing a lawsuit.
Well,
and nobody ever said a word about it,
That
and all of a
brings up-
sudden now everybody's bringing up bipolar.
It brings up another interesting point, which is, were you ever served with a lawsuit in the Northern District of California, United States District Court?
Have I?
Yes.
I've never been served in a lawsuit at all.
Did you write on the envelope, "No thanks," and send it back to me when you got a letter from me?
From what?
Just, have you ever gotten a letter from Howie and Smith, the law firm?
Wait.
Right.
Where this deposition is in a state court action, Skip.
No, it has to do with notice. Just-
No, it's irrelevant.
Yes,
it's
yes.
beyond the scope, not reasonably calculated to lead to the discovery of admissible evidence in the state court action.
We've been here before.
Done.
We've been here before. You just got an order releasing records based on mental issues. Now, don't give me that.
Yeah, that's because I had to make a motion to compel in state court, and we reached a formal stipulation to get those documents protected under a stipulated protective order. Done.
Okay. Objection noted. Did you get a letter from my office?
I don't recall getting a letter from your office.
Do you recall writing "no thanks" on an envelope and
I
sending
don't
it back?
remember
Just
writing-
wait till I'm
Objection,
done.
relevance,
Do you remember writing no thanks on an envelope and returning it to my office?
No, I don't.
Do you know if Cynthia did that?
Relevance.
I don't. You have to ask her.
Don't tap your pen. I can't get my answers in if you do.
Well,
that.
it's irrelevant to the scope of these proceedings. It's beyond the scope.
So that's why you're tapping your pen?
No, I'm doing it to irritate counsel.
No, I'm not irritated. I'm trying to help the videographer who's probably going completely insane because
Noted.
of your
All right.
irrational behavior.
All right.
Nothing further.
All right. I'd like to ask a few questions.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Who are you asking?
Follow up. Joe, I know you've been put through the ringer today. I'm just going to ask you a few follow-up questions, which I believe have not been asked. Have you ever seen Patrick McElwain smoke marijuana in the common areas?
Yes.
Okay. How many times have you seen him smoke marijuana in the common areas?
Once
Okay. And where was that?
in the exercise room.
And when was that?
That was while he was right after we sent him down to be hired. This was maybe January. And I couldn't find him, and I smelled this odor, went into the men's workout. The window was open, and Patrick was sitting on the ledge smoking.
Okay. Was there an incident that you're aware of where the board of directors had changed the course or the operation of the elevator to avoid having residents come into contact with marijuana smoke, something to that
Yes.
effect? Okay, why don't you tell me about
The
that?
elevator used to...
Jackson Foundation.
I asked him if he has any personal knowledge, and he said yes.
Yes. The elevator used to stop on the third floor in the basement. When the marijuana smoke was so heavy on the third floor, they moved the elevator to stop on the fourth floor and the basement, because every time the elevator sat on the third floor, the smoke from the third floor hallway would go into the elevators, and it would reek into the elevators downstairs. As soon as the bottom one went to the fourth floor, then you'd have doors open, the entire bottom lobby area would smell like marijuana.
When was this, Joe?
This was right when Patrick had moved in.
When there was this incident with the dog on the third floor in front of Judge Lanham's door, or just outside of his door, and I believe Skip had used the phrase which number he was doing. Do you know which number that was?
Number 2,
Okay. At the time that that incident happened, were there any other residents who were living on the third floor who owned a dog?
no,
Okay. So the only resident who was living on the third floor at that time was Patrick McElwain. Is that correct?
right, with the dog,
With the dog.
yes.
Okay. When did you last renew your restraining order?
In 2012, 26th of September.
Okay. And so when did you get your initial restraining order? That was in 09, right?
That was 9/11 of 09,
9/11/2009.
yes.
And that was good for how many years?
3,
Okay. So you only renewed it once, correct?
yes.
Okay. Did Patrick McElwain do anything in retaliation for your initial restraining order back in 2009?
Objection, speculation.
Do you know if he did anything in retaliation for you getting a restraining order back in
Same.
2009?
Same objection.
Do you want to answer?
Yeah.
Drove his car, or he had a friend of his come into the garage, pulled his car into my parking space, sped out, did some loop-de-loops, and just floored it and gunned it causing the tires of the other car to create smoke in the building, which set off the alarms, and then fire department was called.
Was anybody fined for, or was there a charge for the department coming out to respond to that incident?
I don't know.
What about Nancy? Did Nancy do anything in retaliation for your 2009 restraining order?
No.
Okay, let's go to 2012. And you renewed your restraining order in September 2012, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Has Patrick done anything in retaliation for you renewing your restraining order in 2012?
Not yet.
What about Nancy McElwain?
No.
Did Nancy McElwain do anything in retaliation for a police report that was made following the Coyote Creek incident or the Coyote Golf Course restaurant incident? That
Oh,
Calls
she.
for speculation.
Yeah, speculation.
They, both Patrick, actually it was Patrick who filed the restraining order against us on September 21st, 2012. And that was both against my wife, and you had completed the paperwork and submitted it for an ex parte motion.
So is it fair to say that there was some civil harassment restraining order or civil harassment order paperwork filed in Superior Court
Yes,
with your case number
Right.
against you?
yes,
And who did that paperwork?
Howie.
Okay. Has Patrick McElwain ever prevented you from leaving the garage at
Yes.
Park Plaza? How many times?
Twice.
Why don't you tell us about the first occasion?
First occasion was when I was coming past him. He moved his car immediately in front of my car and sat there, and then started flipping me off. And then as we're moving forward, he sat there by the gate, and the gate's on a sensor that if you cross a metal section, it automatically starts opening up. And as long as you stay behind that line, the garage door won't open up. So I hit the remote, and the garage door started opening up. And for about 3 minutes, all of a sudden, here comes one of the residents down, and then he sped up, went out of there, heard the car screech, and then I followed to get out of the garage, and I went the opposite direction.
What about the second time?
The second time, there was a garbage truck there, and I was coming out, and he had pinned me between the garbage truck and his car, and wouldn't let me back out to go back in the garage.
How often do you see Patrick since you renewed your restraining order in September 2012?
Maybe once every other week.
Do you see him as often as you did before you renewed your restraining order?
No. I've seen him fewer times.
Is it dramatic in number of times?
Yeah.
If you were to ballpark how many times you saw him in any given week before you renewed your restraining order in September 2012, from
Yeah.
the time that you renewed it, what number are we talking about?
Every other day, 5, 6 times. Weekends a lot.
Do you believe that this litigation, the state court action against Patrick McElwain and his mother, have essentially curbed his attendance at the property, or curbed his actions?
Well, he's disappeared.
Objection,
Hang on,
speculation.
objection, foundation, speculation. Go ahead.
He's disappeared.
Okay. All right. That's it.
I have a couple.
So this elevator change that you just testified about,
Hmm.
how were you aware of that?
I live on the 3rd floor. I asked Donna what happened to the elevators. It's taken forever to get down to the 3rd floor. She says, oh, we had them changed because the marijuana smell was too strong in the elevators.
Okay, so everything you just testified to came from Donna Horwitz telling you that? Is that right?
I smelled the marijuana coming out. I'm on the 3rd floor where it was coming from.
Okay, so What you just testified to about the elevator being changed, I'm asking you
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
That came from Donna Horwitz
Donna
telling you that?
Horwitz telling me that they actually had to move it.
Okay,
Too many people were complaining.
okay. And the incident where the car was doing donuts in the garage and making smoke in the garage, that wasn't Patrick driving the car, was it?
No, it was a friend of Patrick's with Patrick in the car.
Okay. And on those occasions when you said that you couldn't leave the garage, when were those? What year?
That was in 2007 was the first incident, and then 2009 was the second one.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe, I just wanted to go back to this issue about the dog real quick. You allowed Verna to keep her dog, correct?
Yes.
And you wrote a letter to Verna about this incident, correct?
Yes.
Can I show you a letter and ask you whether or not this is a letter that you wrote to Verna concerning that matter?
Yes.
Okay. What is the bait stamp? You know what? Why don't we go ahead and just have that entered next in line? That's the letter that you wrote to Verna, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going quickly back to the issue about the district court lawsuit having to do with notice. Who's representing you in that case? Anyone?
Which district court? These?
Northern District of California.
Oh, the federal court?
Yes.
Our law firm.
Your law firm.
Okay. For the record, that's Grant Baker and his law firm.
And let the record reflect that counsel have not reached a stipulation that this testimony will be admissible or shall count jointly for both the state and the federal district court action. Do you want to go off record?
Yeah, let's go off the record for a second.
Okay, we are off the record at 5:11 p.m. This marks the end of media number 3.